News First, Newsline.
Good evening and welcome. This is Newsline Special. With me is a resilient leader. He survived an impeachment motion in Parliament recently. Joining me this evening on the show is none other than the leader of the UNP as well as the former Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. A very good evening, Mr. Prime Minister, and thank you very much for joining us this evening on the show. Starting off, Mr. Prime Minister, you joined Parliament in 1977. You were the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs in the new government of J.R. Jayawardena. 43 years in Parliament now. What are the key highlights of your career?
Well, there are many highlights. We came in, brought in the open economy, radically transformed the country, faced the unfortunate riots of 83, went through a war, virtual fight, made up with India, had the Indo-Lanka agreement. We also started the provincial councils. Then came the terrible times of 89, 1990, and with Mr. President Premadasa, we carried these through by expanding industrialization, going in for the apparel factories with Janasavi. That's the time I had to go and start negotiating with the IMF, go around, meet with different leaders. Mr. Premadasa didn't like to travel much, and Ranjan Wijeyaratne had died. Then came the impeachment, where we had to work with President Premadasa. His death with that day was a blow, and I learned how to tackle a crisis. Then I became Prime Minister. We brought in some more new technologies. Lost the election. I saw Gamini being killed, a party without leaders, many of them to start rebuilding it from the opposition. Face life in opposition, rebuild a party, rebuild a brand. We tried to work with President Kumaratunga towards a solution, but there was too much politics involved. Had to go through a presidential election when you were leading till the bomb blast took place and sympathy vote went to President Kumaratunga. I feel sorry for her, for she after all lost her the sight in one eye. And then we ourselves became the government, brought in the peace talks for the first time, had to revive an economy with negative growth, get the friendship of all the countries, somehow held it together, then found President Kumaratunga interfering and taking away the ministries. But by that time the economy had become stronger, the army was becoming stronger, the navy was blocking the lines that they said they couldn't get any supplies through, and finally Karuna decided he should try the peace process. So that was a real experience, having worked with everyone back into opposition and this idea of a common front. Then of course in the presidential election, losing it out on a deal made by the then President Mahinda Rajapaksa and the LTT, being in opposition, having a common candidate, looking at the change in the constitution, then again preventing a dictatorship by President Rajapaksa, preventing a third term, but it meant getting together with a common candidate and working together with the common candidate, taking the country out of the serious debt situation, expanding development, working with all the countries in the world, friendships. Well, that was an experience. Then getting thrown out of office unexpectedly, coming back. Of course, we had a presidential election and the whole question of whether to stay in power or not, but since we wanted Mahinda Rajapaksa to give up, we also, the majority of our people wanted to follow the same instance, and we've gone into opposition. Now we are looking at taking the UNP forward, while some of our colleagues have left us thinking they can go the same old way and win elections. So this is all new, and we are having a president for the first time who is not a politician. So maybe he also has to get used to this situation.
Mr. Prime Minister, if you look at the war victory, President Mahinda Rajapaksa, then Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Sarath Fonseca takes the honor of winning the war for Sri Lanka. However, you were very instrumental in splitting the LTTE during the peace process. So how do you view this? You just mentioned about Karuna Amman and the way in which you all were able to split him, making the first stumbling block for the LTTE. And you've been very silent on this.
Well, because LTT got weakened by that, only that you could do the second part. Now, how to tackle it? In my view, you could have still gone ahead, and we are talking with many other countries and made some effort to speak to them, but also at the same time army could have been prepared for this. I felt that by 2007, if the LTT, after we had to give them a time limit, and if when the time limit was over, if they were not there, get international support for what I call police action, just to re-establish the court system and the law and order system in the north and the east. If they agreed to, they had to go under. If they didn't agree to, we could go and call it police action, and we could have had the support of everyone, including a lot of Tamils who would have then been upset with Prabhakaran. As you moved more and more the local population, it was easier. What happened in this instance was there was a lack of strategy of moving the population away from the fighting, so that the LTT was able to make use of human shields. That's what I would have waited. I would have we had 2004, let's say 2005, may have given opportunity to take over the area on the grounds of tsunami relief. By 2004, the LTT was shattered, by then was out of office. You could have asked the army to go and help them. You could have easily have got involved. Otherwise, by 2000, at the end of 2005, you could have tried have one more go, and not there. By 2007, you should have gone in for police action and finished it up. I don't think you needed to have gone. In my view, it had to be over by 2007, one way or other. But the strategy the government followed as such, it took them down to 2009.
So
mine was a mix of political approach and the security approach.
So, Mr. Prime Minister, in 2010, you field Sarath Fonseca as the presidential candidate of the UNP, the larger coalition, the Democratic National Alliance. 2015, you field Maithripala Sirisena, the General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, as the presidential candidate. Do you regret any of these decisions, Mr. Prime Minister?
Well, to get JVP support, we had to go with Sarath Fonseca. They couldn't back a UNP candidate. Similarly, civil society, everyone else didn't want a UNP candidate. Well, all we could have done was then have gone in 2010 as a separate party, taken a risk. You could have been stronger in 2015 to take on the president. Otherwise, you could have gone as yourself in 2015 and taken the risk. You may have made it, you may not have made it. That's what I feel. But then if you didn't make it, people have blamed you, and that would be the end of the party. And the threat was too great in 2015 even to think of going alone. There was an essential threat to democracy.
Mr. Prime Minister, in 2004, during the latter part of 2004, Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga somewhat destroyed the UNP by summoning for elections, and this resulted in a lot of negativity for the UNP. But in 2015, you joined hands once again with the former President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga to field Maithripala Sirisena as your presidential candidate. I'm very well aware that there are no permanent enemies or permanent friends in politics. But what was the thinking behind that decision to join forces again with Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga?
No, she took away the ministry in 2003, and I was not willing to compromise. So the only way out was parliamentary elections. But in 2005, she was a bit concerned because she also had some news of the deal with the LTT. She by that time has realized we still had no way to go except to negotiate, and the negotiations failed to go in for police action. Of course, she was also getting concerned of some of the things that were happening in her own party and the government, And she, in 2011, she did not come out against President Rajapaksa, but she was worried about what happened at the end of the war. But she also felt by then it was going too far, and then you had people who all got together. We had Madulave, Reverend Madulave Sobita sitting down with the TNA. A lot of people who generally wouldn't have supported us, who said we want the right to live, right to speak.
Individuals with the name or initials MS has not gone on your favor for the last few years. In particular, Maithripala Sirisena, then Mangala Samaravira, also Malik Samaravikrama, who were very staunch supporters of this individual called Ranil Wickremesinghe at one point. What happened, Mr. Prime Minister?
Buddhism says you are not who you are in the next minute. So I suppose in life we have to deal with these issues.
Uncertainty. Mr. Prime Minister, you were the leader of the UNP since 1994, quite a long time. And you've only been able to secure the prime ministerial position on a couple of occasions. Have you failed as a leader of the UNP, which is one of the oldest political parties in Sri Lanka?
Well, actually, when I took over in 94, there was no second line, there was no third line. I think with me was only Gamini Athukorala. It took us nearly 7-8 years to build, because those who were in 94 had to retire out, and it was only the next parliament that some new faces came in. We had another loss in the death of Athukorala, and subsequently when some of our members who had some potential went across and joined with Mahinda Rajapaksa. So we had to rebuild again. That's what we have been doing, and that's the lot we brought into Parliament in 2015. But I felt that many of them needed about another 3-4 years of maturity. If you have patience, you don't have maturity. You can't just rush in and create events. So that's how it went. Then of course in 2019 we've lost the presidential election, our candidate lost. Therefore, the view of the majority was, including the candidate, that we should resign rather than wait in office. In 2015, when Mahinda Rajapaksa lost, yes, his government resigned, because you had the presidential system, but this was different. We had a prime minister was the chief person, and it was up to us to decide, and they decided, majority decided to go out. So I went out. It had nothing to do with me having to face elections at all.
Mr. Prime Minister, I want to go back to 3 years. At the Oxford Union Address, you speak about succession planning within the UNP, about second-tier leadership, and how important it is for a democracy like Sri Lanka. Now, this is not a reflection when you are contesting again at 73 years of age as the prime ministerial candidate of the UNP, does it?
Well, the party decided we should go ahead as the party, and if Sajith wanted to, he could be the prime ministerial candidate. Events turned otherwise, but as I always said, we had to go through this process. It would have been about 222, 223 when we would have found who the actual leader was. It's a question of the leadership material of them gelling together and putting forward someone with whom they could hold together at least for 5 to 6 years before you may have started fighting, by which time either the leader would have taken hold of the party, or it would have been too weak and there would have been someone else. Remember when DS died and Dudley came, there was the Dudley Sir John split. Then in 67 there was the Dudley JR issue, and when that got resolved, there was the Dudley Premadasa issue. Then that got resolved, there was the JR Rukman issue, and when that was over, there was the Premadasa versus Lalit and Gamini. So UNP has been at every leadership change going through this. I thought we should prevent it by getting them together and getting them to gel, and that was gradually happening till these elections came along.
Mr. Prime Minister, you were appointed as the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs in the J.R. Jayawardena government, who was one of your early mentors in your political life. However, when you take a look at your respective governments in 2002 as well as 2015, you don't see any new faces taking the position of a deputy ministerial candidate or even a cabinet ministerial position. Young blood being infused within the UNP has been a problem, isn't it?
Well, there has been young blood in the 2002 cabinet. I brought in Sajid, Naveen as I think Sagala as deputy minister. They were quite, I mean, not as young as me. Yeah. I had new ministers such as, well, I had Vajira. I think I had two there, Milinda, then Ravi Karanayaka, people like that, Johnny Fernando, all we tried out. It's up, give them a chance, either they make it or they don't, or they go out and join another party. Well, this time also there were young ministers, young state ministers, and I brought some of the people as deputy ministers from the 210 and the 215 batch. That is how we've gone along. But it takes time. I mean, there has to be patience. This game is that at least 20-30 years. You have to be tested out in your patience and your leadership skill and your ability to steer yourself in front, even if you have got overall majority, and then clinch it together and hold it. So, there is about a 7-year period in the life of an aspirant where you put yourself in front, you hold yourself, you become the leader, then you can hold it for about 4-5 years until you consolidate yourself.
Mr. Prime Minister, if you look at the world order, the new normal is having individuals of young age. Let's take a look at Trudeau, for an example, in Canada. Let's take a look at France, for an example, Macron. You see young people taking over the helm of Prime Minister or even presidential position across the world. However, in Sri Lanka, it seems that the old guard wants to stick on to power for a prolonged period of time. Is this claim true?
No, I think what's happened is in Europe, they've gone through a phase of young leaders, including Obama, and they are questioning that as to how they tackle some of the issues that have come. Now, people like Merkel seems to be far more mature. What's happened in our part of the world, remember Narendra Modi is the same age as me and the president. Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa would be the same age as Sheikh Hasina. Imran Khan is about 2 years younger than us. The best leader of China was Deng Xiaoping. I mean, at that age, we have to retire from politics. So there is a phase through which you go on young leaders, then you come back. This has happened in UK. They were sort of questioning what was, he's a good friend of mine, but did Prime Minister Cameron have that experience, that otherwise he would never gone in for a referendum. So there is this whole issue. But I think older person is there, he should have the younger people around him and let them take over. That's what I've been doing in this party for this election campaign. I allowed them to come forward, get involved in the political part of the campaign. I've actually stayed the background. I just addressed some party meetings. So you have to let them, and then they must have the patience. They must know how to hang on.
So, Mr. Prime Minister,
there no other way.
Mr. Prime Minister, you hit the nail on the head when you say young blood must be infused around the senior members of the party. However, when you look at the nomination list of the UNP this time around, you've given nominations to individuals, Mr. Prime Minister, who were rejected at the 2015 UPFA nomination list. They are contesting from areas like Anuradhapura. I don't want to mention names because it's going to be biased because that person is not here on the show today. So when you say about young blood, is it reflecting the current nomination list of the UNP?
No, there are older people. In this case, there was a big demand from the Anuradhapura side that he put on. I mean, basically, we wouldn't have gone otherwise. They wanted something, they wanted him because he seems to be having some connections in part of the area. So it's up for them then to work out and see what happens. But remember, if you look around Colombo, there are a lot of new blood, new faces, may not be in the 20s, but 30s, 40s. Outside Colombo city is full of new faces, younger blood and new faces in Gampaha, in Kandy, in Matale, in Polonnaruwa. So, like these areas, you are finding a lot of new faces that are coming up, and I think that is good. There are some in which the new faces are much older, but they are in the system and they can hold it. So, there are new faces, old and young, trusted and reliable faces who prove that they are loyal to the party, and new faces. I think everywhere the preferences will go to a new, they will go for new face as well as a trusted old face. In my view, that is the mix we have given. New faces to go to parliament, that we will not be polluting the Diyavanna.
Is the Samaga Jana Balawegaya part of the UNP or the UNP part of the SJB? All this said no after this short commercial break. Stay connected, stay with Newsline Special. We will be right back.
News First, Newsline.
Welcome back. This is Newsline Special. With me this evening is the former Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. Mr. Prime Minister, the UNP is one of the parties in Parliament or even outside which eloquently speaks about upholding democracy, and you see this in many political fora as well. But one of the allegations leveled at the UNP is the fact that the UNP is not a democratic party internally. How do you counter these allegations?
UNP is a democratic party. A process of consultation goes on to try and arrive at a unanimous decision. That's what we've done so far. Sometimes the decision comes to us from outside, like the 215 presidential candidates, but then I have to get everyone to agree to it. Other instances, we talk among ourselves and resolve what has to be done. Basically, we are not like the Labour Party, which goes into a lot of, in England, there are a lot of disputes in the executive. We would be more like right of centre party, the Conservatives, where discussions take place and the discussions then lead to decisions.
Mr. Prime Minister, replying to one of my earlier questions, you said that predominantly over the last few decades, you've seen fights for leadership within the UNP ranks. Was there a fight between the SJB and the UNP when the split happened? Was there a rift?
There were fights or jostling among the aspirants for leadership without having the patience. Well, it was a matter between some of those parties in the alliance and us. Everyone was talking of alliance, but we realized that after the presidential elections, we had lost nearly 2.5 million Sinhala votes. We had to regain it. Our strategy should be that. So, if there was to be, we had to get together and they wanted an alliance, it had to be in the form of alliance, and we wanted anyway, said we have to come under the elephant symbol. We can't come under any other symbol, because at the presidential election, we opted to go under the other symbol, the swan, because some of them thought that Maithripala Sirisena will support us, which never took place. Therefore, my view, our view was that we should go under the elephant, come what may, and our party constitution requires, the law says that we form a party in parliament and capture power. So that's basically where it was. They wanted, we said, send in your constitution with we'd like to examine it and have an alliance with the elephant, but that never took place. Some of the smaller parties wanted to become a new party and come into it and merge. that would have destroyed the UNP identity, which we were against. So, that I think was the main dispute that was there. But now they have gone, so let them come as a separate party, contest and get whatever they think are the votes and the MPs. With democracy, you have to contend with people who want to leave, make new parties, join other parties. So, you got to live with that.
Is the Samaga Jana Balawega part of the UNP or the United National Party part of the SJB?
They are a separate party as much as the JVP, TNA or Pohottu or anyone else. And now they are also anti-UNP.
Less than 20 sitting MPs, when you take a look at the old parliament, Mr. Prime Minister, contesting for the elections on the 5th of August, which is the D-Day for Sri Lanka. And you have approximately over 80 sitting MPs with the SJB. Does this worry you as the leader of the UNP?
No, because some of them jumped since the activists said we will work for that side. Now they realize, now the activists who call the tune is the voters and how the ground is shifting with the present crisis. Any case, this was based on that we can't win, so let's try and get in, and where can we get the best of the largest number of votes, we go there. The 20 were people who were convinced that we could get in, then some of them were anyway going to lose, and my view was that we had to have a large number of new faces in the UNP and we would have to drop some of those faces. So, some of the MPs didn't like that too. It does not matter, we can face it, and we are confident as we see for the electorate, and the electorate is not only the UNP electorate, but it is also people who voted for Gotabaya Rajapaksa to be president. So, we are looking at expanding our reach.
Former Minister Rauf Hakim and former Minister Rishad Badruddin predominantly has always supported you, Mr. Prime Minister. However, now you've got the attention of the leader of the Nava Samaj Party, Mr. Vikram Babu Karunaratne, supporting the UNP. How did this happen? A leftist party supporting the UNP?
Mr. Karunaratne was supporting us even in 2011, 2015 and the parliamentary elections. He wanted to contest. But what we wanted was, we learnt after the 2019 elections, we talked with many of the Buddhist leaders, was that they wanted to see UNP Muslims. They said, like Mr. Muhammad and Mr. Hamid and Mr. Mansoor, they said you can have alliances with other parties, Muslim, anyone, but we also want to see UNP Muslim leaders. We also want to see UNP Tamil leaders. Then you Sinhalese, you Tamils and you Muslims are all committed to the Sri Lankan identity. There must be at least one party which stands for the Sri Lankan identity, and it has been told to me even by people who support the Pohottu. So, that is why we also wanted, we were not wanting to allow them to dominate, and I think some of them thought best in the future is to merge to a new entity and take that over, because they did not know how it would, how politics will be in the future. We wanted to keep the identity of the UNP as it is, but if anyone wanted, join the UNP. Now, that would have been for one or two people admitting that they had made mistakes by going on this line. Otherwise, we said we are going to be the big party, you come with us and we will dictate the terms. So, some of them didn't like that, and they thought, look, better to go along. So, Mr. Hakim has made his choice, let that be.
R. Sambandhan, the leader of the TNA, has always supported you as an individual, Mr. Prime Minister. We've seen that even during the impeachment motion that was tabled in Parliament against you. This time around, has the TNA indicated to you that they would be supporting you subsequent to the August 5th elections, or any indication of that sort?
I told the TNA, don't get involved in this, let it be, and we will discuss issues after elections. But In between, I did work with Mr. Sumandran and some of the others in developing the public health emergency draft. So there were at least 2 parties in the opposition committed to it. I keep in touch with many of them, but we said, and they also agreed, you keep out of this. You have a fight on hand in the north. Go ahead.
Does that invariably mean, Mr. Prime Minister, that they would be supporting the UNP in the longer run?
I don't want to put them into any difficulties. They know my views. I have shown by action.
When the
I
government
can easily go to the Tamils and speak to them.
Mr. Prime Minister, now when the government is steadfast about winning a 2/3 majority in Parliament, which is approximately over 90% of the votes cast, the UNP and the SJB unfortunately are busy fighting to consolidate power in Sirikota. Is this a healthy notion for a party like the UNP and even the SJB for that matter? You've been in politics for nearly 50 years now. Is this national politics?
We are not fighting to consolidate power in Sirikota. This belongs to our party. You are telling me what they want to do. But basically, we are competing to form the government. So actually, there are only 2 parties that are competing to form the government, Pohottuwa and us. And today we are coming out with a plan of action. Others are parties that may want to get a number in Parliament and negotiate with the winning side. We are going in for power. So that's why we don't really reply to the SJB. They are not a party contending for power. And the whole situation is shifting. I mean, these guys are talking of 2/3 support to. First tell us when the election will take place.
Will the election take place?
I don't know. That's why they must first tell that the ground situation is shifting. I mean, look at here. Everyone's allowances are cut. Go to the private sector firm next door. You go to the government department here. They have no allowances. You go somewhere else, people have been thrown out. The cafes there are closed. So really, that is the situation, not what it was 3 months of about in January.
Let's talk about the presidential election which the UNP lost, Mr. Prime Minister. What was the reason behind this? Is it the bond controversy or is it the April 21st attacks?
I think the bond issue was over by that time. I had gone in, given evidence, have nothing much more. Say, do what you want. No, actually we had a setback during the local authority elections. I think we had all the time into ourselves and went in for the worst time with the drought on and prices being high. Then our plan was to recover, and we were gradually recovering when the 52-day crisis came. But that actually boosted up some more, and by that time we had the new plans which were ready, more funds going in, more jobs being created, Gamperaliya, Enterprise Sri Lanka, and the whole program for the Sinhala New Year. And from there we had picked up, and we were about to do the next round. Actually, to start off on 21st evening, when I was to attend a Sinhala New Year function in Colombo. It did change. From that time onwards, our ratings were virtually pretty bad in May, June. It was not even worth thinking of contesting the presidential election. Then we started building up again. From July onwards, we were just stabilizing into August. At that stage, we had to take some decisions into September of how we go. So we took the decision, but that didn't work out.
Speaking to an interview, a UK-based television channel, Mr. Prime Minister, after the April 21st attacks, you say that there may be a setback for the UNP because of the April 21st attacks at the presidential election. So you go for the elections with a losing attitude, a losing mentality.
No, I said that during that time I said, and actually we were following it. May, June were pretty bad. But we were taking steps. By June, again we started pumping money back into the economy, got tourism going. So we had come into a sort of the starting line by August, September.
April 21st attacks, Mr. Prime Minister, who is at fault?
Well, the government was given the information and that was not passed down. So, in a sense, someone or some units in the government were at fault. If those units were there, well, finally it came on us.
Mr. Prime Minister, there was brewing tension between you and the President at that time, and we saw this in many political fora as well. Did the tensions between you and the President contribute to the 21st April attacks? Was it sheer negligence, or was there a political conspiracy as articulated by former Minister Harin Fernando at a recent political rally? What went wrong?
Actually, after the 52 days, relations between many of us and the President was strained. But we had to work together, and we had asked him that he had agreed to hand the police ministry over to us as soon as some narcotics investigation were over. Then he was sort of actually dragging his feet on it. We were pressing him, and we thought we'll have a showdown with him after the New Year holidays when people are going off. But in the period it was with him, and he had informed them that I should not be summoned to any meetings of the National Security Council, and I should not be given any information by intelligence. So that was the situation, and we were going to take all this up in April at that stage. But what has happened is the information had been given at the certain officials level, and the question is whether information was given to the President. The President says no, some of the others said he was aware of it. So that is where the issue lies, and the Parliamentary Select Committee had also made certain comments on these issues. So that there was information. I didn't know there was information till that night when I went in, and they said, well sir, we had the information. And he said, why the hell didn't you tell us? And the Secretary, the words I used. And they said President had told us not to give the information. In fact, when we summoned the first meeting at Temple Trees, the officials didn't come. Having spoken to the President, he said don't attend. But by coincidence, I thought, well, if everything is happening in the Defence Ministry, we'll have a clearer picture if we go there. So we went to the Defence Ministry, and that's where we found everything out. But I spoke to the President. I said, look, we are going to take action immediately. And we told them, go ahead, crack. The police was ready. By evening, they had identified the first lot. Unfortunately, a young police officer was killed, and another two police officers. But that gave us the breakthrough. And I said, go ahead. Even the next day, they were running off into it. But the President by Wednesday was trying to take over the investigations. So
the buck seems to not be stopping as far as the April 21st attacks are concerned. And you were very strong after the April 21st attacks because you were the Prime Minister even at that time, Mr. Prime Minister. 7 months into the investigations, there was a presidential election. Why couldn't the government determine as to who was at fault for the April 21st attacks?
We had determined the people behind it. We had the Scotland Yard, the Americans, a large number of people in different areas working with us. We had determined who was behind it, what they did, and they had a symbolic link with the ISIS. What happened was when they conveyed this information went back to the ISIS. I don't know, the question mark was the ISIS ordered it. The thinking was no, but they knew something of this group. So when it was given to the ISIS, immediately Al-Baqa went a day later made a video announcing it. Now it was that video which established to the intelligence community in America the man was alive. Otherwise they were divided. Then the order was given by President Trump to go ahead. In fact, he spoke to me after this, said we are going to wipe these people out. He gave the order, and within a few months Al-Baqa got knocked out. Then they had enough information to knock the next man out. So the network got broken at the top. So they may not have planned it. Some of their sympathizers who planned and informed them. Here also that part has gone off. When we told them look for any other cells, so there were people, looked at people who had gone for training, the information that had been there, and to keep collecting. So by that time most of it had been rounded up. What you have to do now is to look at whether there are any sleeping cells, and that's what we have been doing.
Can I say a catastrophic disaster led to global terrorism in Sri Lanka under your watch as the Prime Minister?
Well, I was the Prime Minister, the Minister of Defence was elsewhere, but the moment it happened, I took it over and ensured that it was the people apprehended that day itself, which is very fast for this type of operation. Sometimes it takes as much as 3, 4, 5 days. But you must remember this has had some impact. I saw the other day a girl, an English girl who converted to Islam has been taken over with the Scotland Yard because she had wanted to do Sri Lanka Easter type of a blast in the St. Paul's Cathedral. So this seems to be, it's a peculiar system. I mean, we've looked at the LTT and others, we've never seen a situation like this.
During the last 5 years, what are the regrets the former Prime Minister has? All this and more after this short commercial break. Stay connected. This is Newsline Special.
News First, Newsline.
Welcome back. Mr. Prime Minister, interestingly in 2015, January 8th, there was a new president. 16th of August, that same year, you got a majority in Parliament where you became the Prime Minister. One of the ethos of your campaigns were to bring about good governance. Do you think that same slogan boomeranged on the UNP leadership as well as you during the last 4.5 years in governance?
Now, opponents used it against us. We didn't do enough work to show that it had really worked. It was really functioning. You had the Freedom of Information Act. You had the independent commissions, the procurement commission. There were procurement guidelines. The fact is that in Sri Lanka and elsewhere, newspapers, media, all electronic, all right to shout corruption, corruption, corruption. We replied to it, but we didn't do enough propaganda on the fact that good governance was moving in and it had to get consolidated. But certainly no one was at danger because they stated there was a corrupt act performed, whether it was in fact actually true or not.
But that was the fault of the UNP.
I said so. I said that's one of the things we didn't push that enough. That's one of the issues that we had.
Mr. Prime Minister, I have to ask you this question, having you today on the show. If I don't ask this question, then I will be failing in my duties. The central bank bond controversy. What happened under your watch, Mr. Prime Minister, because you were in charge of finances at that time and even the central bank? What happened?
No, we had, that was the first issue of bond. By that time, the government required more money. The Minister of Highways said he wanted 13 billion. Then the Minister of Finance found that there are a lot of projects which were not in the appropriation bill, outside that, for which funding was needed, bills to be paid which are not there in the provisions made. So since money was needed immediately, there was a discussion at the Economic Management Committee, and I told the relevant ministers and the central bank governor to go and discuss it separately and let us know and how we are going to raise it. So there had been a discussion on the need for about 13 or 15, need to raise about 15 billion pounds. The governor had said he will try and do it on this bond, but that had also been criticized early in our committee why the central bank went for 1 billion when they could have at least gone for 5 and then could have taken more. They were trying, they said this is a caretaker government, that's why we went for 1 billion, but all of us said caretaker or no, you get more. So they said we'll go for more than 1 billion. That the night of the discussion, Thursday night only the governor informed me that they can get more than 1 billion. I said how much? He was thinking even not 10 billion. I said will you get that money? I left it open. I said whatever you can get, whatever you have get, you can take it. Then the next day he informed me that they had agreed on 10 billion, but there was in fact 20 billion. That was all. When I heard that he wanted to take 20 billion and the others wanted to take 5 billion and they compromised at 10 billion. The issue that came was perpetual treasuries, that they had bid and they had been the largest bidder. Others said we didn't put large bids because the bids were 1 billion.
Because they didn't know.
They didn't know. The system is basically, I suppose when you take a decision, there's always someone who passes it to them. This decision was apparently taken there at in the room itself, on the floor. But how did perpetual treasuries know to put so much of money in? And that's why the other committee also wanted, the Pitipana committee wanted the Bank of Ceylon investigate how they gave the money. The question was whether it could have been done. Obviously, it was done before Thursday night when I was informed of it. So this issue came, and to me, then we anyway impounded 12 billion rupees that was with the central bank on this, which belonged to perpetual treasuries. No one knew the amount. Later on, it was told to be 11 billion, so we had more. But at this stage, it also became important. One was whether the question came up whether there had been actually a loss. I said keep that, we separate that from this one of ethics, whether the governor's son-in-law should have bid in that process was one. Secondly, was that inside information from the governor that resulted in this information. He said, no, I have been going around the treasury. I have my contacts. They also pointed out that earlier the former governor's sister was on the board. I said, yes, we knew that. That's why I asked for him to step down and give up share the control in perpetual treasuries. It had happened before. It was not illegal, but in the code that we had, it should not have. It shouldn't happen. The second issue has been the ownership, because the perpetual treasuries are contesting the fact that there is a loss to the government, and they say this money belongs to the company. This has to be sorted out. Otherwise, I don't think criminal issues or anything will be can succeed. So these,
Mr. Prime Minister, if I can interrupt you for
these are the two issues that were there. But I thought take the ethical issue and we should go into it.
Right. Mr. Prime Minister, the governor of the central bank, Arjun Mahendran, on the 23rd of March, speaking to me exclusively when I was covering the story, said that he takes responsibility for not informing primary dealers regarding the latest treasury bond issue, which you said had increased to 10 billion. Now, this tantamounts to insider trading, isn't it? Because one primary dealer was privy to information which the other primary dealers were not. So hence, there is insider trading here, isn't it? At the look of it.
So that's the look of it. But the fact was that he had told me, that's what I said, we look in, he had told me only, I had sort of virtually said, all right, take whatever you can that night. And the transactions with the Bank of Ceylon had taken place earlier. And there was some evidence about the Bank of Ceylon people knowing something and them having talked. The perpetual treasuries having discussed this with the Bank of Ceylon. So the trail was, we didn't really discuss the actual needs till Thursday morning at the meeting with the ministers and the governors. I was told on the night. So how was it that he had earlier? Was he had inside information from the governor, or was it information he got from someone else? So I said that's what we have to look at. That's
Mr. Prime Minister,
but he took responsibility for not informing primary dealers. He also said he didn't inform Monetary Board,
that's right,
for which the Commission found fault with him. Commission was originally of the view that it was the Monetary Board that had decided. I said no. Overall policy belongs to the government. Within that, the Monetary Board has the independence to do so. Yeah, he said he took the decision to go in on the first day. I think the ministers asked, why are you doing it Why are you waiting? Why don't you go in on the first day?
So, Mr. Prime Minister, you are saying that the integrity of the former governor of the central bank was questioned, even by you at that time.
No, I asked him at that time, and I put the Pitipana committee to see where it had occurred. So, this is what some of the people said, and it could not be, it had not been established what the source was. We have to establish the source, or it should at least show more than 50 to 60%. It could have been the governor.
Mr. Prime Minister, John Exter, the founding governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, says that he considers the appointment of the governor to the office of the governor should possess unquestioned integrity. Integrity was questioned. Why did you continue with protecting the former governor of the Central Bank?
I told him if there is anything against you, he said I want to resign. I said if there is anything against you, you should resign. He said yes, I'd like to go out honorably, I can always find another job. That was all, I had nothing more. And it had been unfortunate practice where that company had the governor's sister on the board, and we cut it. Then there were the instances of people retiring and joining from central bank and joining the boards of banks. So this whole thing was in the process of being cleaned up.
So
but where it was for a grey area, whether it was him or any of the other employees, we wanted to ensure that something had happened. Certainly he was in a situation, but I wanted it, or I also want to know whether there has been any impropriety or influence. Otherwise, we would have been blamed, saying that we sent a man in, he accepted his guilt and he has left. So it was the interest of us to establish whether Arjuna Mahendran was really involved in it, which case we had to take the total responsibility, even I. Otherwise, it were not, still he would have had to go. I don't think he would have stayed very long in the central bank.
Now there is a arrest or warrant against Arjuna Mahendran, and on the 28th of October 2016 in Parliament, Mr. Prime Minister, you said Arjuna Mahendran has not escaped the country. However, since then we are yet to apprehend this man. Are you sure he didn't escape at that point, Mr. Prime Minister?
No, Arjuna Mahendran was there. He gave evidence before the commission. Then actually he met me and said he's finished. He's waiting for the decision, and that he's going abroad because his passport was with the government. That much I know. Then he went, and later on he decided to stay on. That's I heard once the pressure came on him. But certainly when he left, it was not with the intention of...
He even changed his name to Arjun Alexander, according to Interpol.
No, he has just told some people no. Right. That he was not. And I asked someone in Singapore, he said no, he's still known as... he said that's false, it couldn't have been Interpol, this thing, but he is in touch. I know he's in touch with this thing. I asked some of the Singaporeans, people I know there, has Arjuna changed his name? He said no. And then he has informed some of the people whom he knows that look, I have not changed my name, I have nothing wrong with my name.
Mr. Prime Minister, talking about economic recovery
best is to ask him what he has done, but I think there is no evidence there of him having changed. I am convinced that he didn't change his name.
Mr. Prime Minister, let's talk about economic recovery. We just have a few more minutes to go. If you are appointed as the Prime Minister, hypothetically on the 5th of August this year, what changes would you bring in, envisage for the country?
Immediately we'll follow what we have. Firstly, I tell the President, we must pass the Public Health Act. We must look at the need for testing, and that I will start, I'm going to lay down the economic policy and immediately also start talking with the IMF. And I think we have to work together. I mean, it's not a question of working separate, but these are, I'm asking for a mandate to go ahead and do this, get Corona under control and try and get the money back. That would be my main issue. I just get started on that the day itself.
What are the challenges politicians are facing at present because of a global pandemic like COVID-19?
Uncertain. It's like going for war. But then you must be prepared for war and go ahead if you feel.
Are you in favor of elections for the 5th of August this year?
I think you have to have elections this year. I don't know if further is to judge, but if by any chance they can't have it, I think before end of August we must have it and finish this uncertainty. So someone is in charge and they can go ahead.
Let's say hypothetically, the SLPP gains a simple majority at the next elections. Will Ranil Wickremesinghe's UNP support Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa then?
We are contending for power. So if the people reject us, then we have to be in the opposition. But if they want to abolish the executive presidency, certainly, I mean, you can support them from the opposition. So there may be parts of your policy for which you can give support, others you will oppose. No touching the 19th Amendment, no doing away with the, so there are both. But I know the fact that we won't have to do all those. We won't have to be thinking of whether we are going to support Mahinda Rajapaksa or not on individual issues, because Mahinda Rajapaksa will have to decide as the opposition how much of support is he giving us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister, for this candid discussion. It was a pleasure to have you on board today on Newsline Special. Thank you very much and all the very best for the 5th of August this year.